Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
You heard a big voice guy. That's Nebraska Preps Postgame. That's Jacob Padilla, and this voice is me, Damon Benning, ODB. What's up, Jacob? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you, DB?
I'm good. It's weird. I feel like we talk all the time, so when we're actually on the podcast, it's like, are we going to be any different than we are via text or anything else? I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. We got a lot of ideas, though. This was some weekend.
Yeah, this is some good basketball. Obviously, you got the two stretches of conference tournaments. At the holiday, a lot of teams, their conferences kind of knock out their tournaments in, and then we get to this time of the year where there are a bunch of the other conferences that are playing out their tournaments, and we had some really good ones this week for sure.
Yeah, so the firm date, district seedings will be what, February 13th? Is that?
Something like that.
Is that about the date, right around there? So a couple of teams have a chance to make some hay, right? Because there are some big games coming up for some of these basketball teams. I mean, if you're Waverly or Platteview or Scott, Scott's got Norris on the schedule. Waverly's got Elkhorn on February 9th. Norris has Mount Michael this weekend, which should be really, really good. I mean, it will have a chance to sort itself out. In A, it's really interesting because that back half is so muddled, right? I mean, is there a real separator 6 through 10? I think the top 5 is the consensus, right?
Yeah.
And in some order, it goes Westside, Papillion, Millard West, and Westside, Millard West can figure that out here Friday.
Yeah.
Probably Gretna, Papio South-ish.
Maybe at Kearney. So that's the thing. Once we're to the point at there where you could pick a name out of a hat and it's probably has a strong case there. We've seen Papillion, the Vista South kind of play themselves out of that stretch there. So
it's safe to say the 6th spot is up for grabs this week with the winner of Westside and Millard West, because Westside has beaten both Papillion and Papio South, so we put them ahead of those guys. And then there's Millard West with 2 quality wins. They got Millard South Saturday or Friday. Was that Friday night? Yeah, that was Friday night. And a little bit of a grudger, 55-45. And then Saturday, who did Millard West beat? Is that Gretna?
I forget now.
No, Gretna's coming up because Gretna had Central in that 44-36 barn burner. Oh, boy, talking to some folks from Central, they get so frustrated. Oh, yeah. And it's no coincidence. After every Gretna game, you always hear shot clock.
Yep.
Coach Feakin and Coach Hurd know what they're doing, and we'll talk to Coach Feakin Friday on the show, and I can't wait because he's super easygoing. Like, you talk to him, he's really free-flowing, and he's really funny.
Yeah.
And you'd think they'd have a little bit of a loose style, but he's got a lot of young kids, and they guard you.
And that's the thing about Gretna is a few years ago when they were top of Class B and they had some of those Zach Immigs and the Joey Johnsons and Ty Dewins and those guys, Trey Brown, they played a little bit different style then when they had that kind of amount of talent. The last few years, they haven't quite got those level of guys. They've kind of had to build younger guys up and kind of play some guys early. So it's been a different talent level, different kind of skill set level the last few years. So he's adjusted and is doing what the best
giving
he can.
His team the best chance to win.
So not always fun to watch, but you can't necessarily grudge a guy for trying to help his kids as much as possible.
Isn't that what good coaches do?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what good coaches do. So you and I, this was unintentional. We kind of split.
Yeah.
Here a little bit. Yeah. You were covering the latter portion of the MC tournament.
Yeah.
And I watched Wahoo and Platteview. So that gave us a nice range. And then we both happened to be a huge part of Bellevue West in prep. So where do we start? Should we got to go right to number 1?
Yeah. I think we got to start with Chucky Hepburn.
Wow. I mean, what more superlatives can you throw out? I mean, we're out of adjectives, right? At least the positive ones.
Sorry about that. Yeah, for sure. And the most amazing part is the different ways he did it. Triple-double against Millard North on Friday, then comes back and just takes over 17 points in the fourth quarter. I think got 5 more in overtime and a key assist. Like, he just dominated the second half of that game. Finished with 32.
At one point, had scored 23 out of Bellevue West 25 points. He scored all their field goals. Bellevue West had 2 made free throws in that time, and he single-handedly just took the game over.
So they opened the third quarter with a 6-2 run by Hepburn. Prep switched to a kind of extended trapping 2-3. They did not score the rest of the quarter.
Right.
Prep went into the fourth quarter with a 7-point lead. They stuck with that zone and gave them some problems. And then apparently one of the student section members
got under Chucky's skin a little bit.
Did a little bit of trash talking there, and then Chucky comes out, bangs in 4 threes. And it is kind of funny because I was sitting kind of courtside. I'm behind the prep bench area, and you could hear every time the ball swung, Josh Lukey's yelling, "Don't leave Chucky, don't leave Chucky." Swung it right back, bang, buried it like 3-4 different times.
Yeah, so at the 5:59 mark, it was 54-43 Creighton Prep. And right then you're thinking, oh my goodness, Bellevue West is in trouble. Yeah. And it's right about then the 3-point barrage started from one Chucky Hepburn. And it's kind of one of those folk tales that you'll retell differently in about 7-8 years. But it appears to have started with the "you can't shoot." and once that was uttered, it was almost like it got personal.
Yeah, it's funny. Like that. I mean, anybody that's followed Chucky's career knows the overall 3-point percentage is kind of one of the areas that he needs to improve. It hasn't been his strength. But I swear, like, he's shooting 80% in clutch situations on threes. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It seems like that's where all his threes come from.
And lost in all this, we automatically fast forward to the prep game. But he may have been better against Millard North. Yeah. And we talked about this morning on the show. You know what makes the triple-double so impressive? Now, Bellevue West doesn't really have this problem, but a lot of times you can make the right basketball play and you can share it, and it doesn't get converted on the other end, right? You have to play with good enough finishers and get them in spots and in good enough spots to kind of capitalize. And a triple-double at the high school level is really, really impressive, especially against a team like Millard North.
And just 1 or 2 turnovers, I believe.
2, I think.
Yeah, so 11 assists, 2 turnovers against that Millard North team with all that length. And I wasn't there because of volleyball getting canceled late. I wasn't able to kind of RSVP in time to get there. So I went to some different games on Friday, but just kind of listen to people that were there. It's Millard North didn't really seem interested in contesting a whole lot of 3-point shots. And that was a difference. The first game, they shot like 11 for 30 or something like that. They come back here, or I think it was even worse than that, but come back here, knock down 12 threes. I think Millard North only hit like 5 of them, and then almost double them up in turnovers. So you're getting more possessions, you're getting more threes. It's going to be hard for Millard North to keep up that way.
Yeah, Millard North's inability to take care of the basketball. And it's an interesting point that was made. In your opinion, if Millard North is going to have a chance to cut down the nets, are they better if Hunter Salas leads them in scoring?
Probably not. So the thing
that's how I feel.
And I think that the reason like St. Thomas has been leading them in scoring this season compared to Hunter's, St. gets more easy buckets, and it's within the flow of the offense. They get him the big body around the basket. He gets more finishes. Teams are going to be loading up against Hunter every single time, and he's a guy that's creating out on the perimeter, off the bounce a lot of time. He'll go get offensive boards and putbacks and that kind of stuff, just uses athleticism at times. But generally, they're able to get easier looks for St. just based on the position he plays, his skill set, and his body type compared to Hunter. And especially, and like I said, with the defensive attention, obviously everybody knows St. Like he's right up there 1B on the scouting report, but it's a little bit different. I think the way he scores versus, so if they're not getting those catch and shoot threes from St. That's a huge part of it. He hasn't quite been shooting as well recently as he did to start the year, which you're shooting over 50%, so that was never going to keep up. But if I think he was 1 of 6 in that game from 3, St. was. So if they're not getting those easier buckets from St., and Hunter's got to be the guy that puts him on his back, it's going to be a little bit easier for teams, I think, to keep up with him.
How does Millard North, in your opinion, because we saw this, and maybe it's the Chucky Hepburn factor. Chucky, you're a better basketball player than I am, especially now. But Chucky, I've said this before, could get me 8 a night, right? I could go out there tomorrow probably, for sure 6. We won't stretch it to 8. He's just going to make me a better player. And we capped this almost perfectly. We said, hey, listen, he's the maestro. If he can feed those complementary pieces, who's 3, 4, 5? We penciled in Josiah Dotzler is probably the next leading scorer behind he and Frankie Fiddler. You get help from Greg Brown. You get help from William Kyle. He can just spoon feed and make you better basketball players, so they get you multiple ways. How does Millard North counter that and get a guy, a talented guy, like Jason Green going? He's such an X factor. If he plays well and he's scoring the basketball, Millard North will almost never lose. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. He's as good as anybody's quote-unquote third option out there, right?
Yeah.
What happens in the flow of that offense where he can't be that Alfred like a Josiah Dotzler is right now to Batman and Robin?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think part of it is Josiah's skill set, his ability to catch and shoot, knock down threes, kind of the ways morph into that player, and then leverages that to create other things. And then he gets it off his steals and turnovers and plays like that. And I think Bellevue West is kind of the way they space the floor, the way Chucky's kind of picking teams apart. It creates more opportunities for a guy like Josiah. Whereas a lot of time, Jason, he's got those offensive rebound opportunities, but they don't run a ton of pick and rolls necessarily where they've got the floor real space and it's just a 2-man game without an extra body or two in the paint. Occasionally they'll kind of get the floor space. He'll face up and make a play against a bigger guy. They got him on him, or put a smaller guy. You can get him in the post or whatever. But I think it's just a matter of them continuing to space the floor well, move the ball well, and keep other guys involved and get those guys more touches. And occasionally, I think those guys that Jason, I think, can be a little bit more consistent in terms of taking advantage of his opportunities, but it's hard to be consistent. He
almost always has a mismatch every night out there. Very few are going 6'7" and can come out and guard guys that can handle the basketball.
And we're talking about like the mismatches and the easy point opportunities for Saint versus Hunter, and Jason can kind of the same thing there. I think that's what they've got to be able to do, is where they come out every night, whoever has the best matchup, they've got to be able to play through that versus just kind of relying on Saint and Hunter to go get theirs. And that's what we saw in the Metro semifinal against Central, is where Jason and Tyler Sandoval, they've had the best matchup.
Really good play. I just think there's some ways night in, night out that are – can you imagine being Tyler Sandoval and Jason Green and getting somebody else's 4th and 5th best defenders?
Yeah.
I mean, that's you got to find a way to be able to take advantage of it.
And maybe there's more off-ball screens and that kind of stuff you can do to get those guys in the right spots. It's just a matter. They've got all the talent there. They just got to kind of figure out how they can, again, leverage game in, game out, where their best matchups are.
So more impressive, a 2-0 weekend from Omaha Central, grinding one out against Gretna, or Prep and a loss to Bellevue West on Saturday, in which it was a fantastic game, right? I mean, Buckley really good in stretches. City really good in stretches.
And Junger stepped up, too, after not doing much in the first game.
Yeah, a couple of key buckets from Junger showing you versatility. How about a guy that I almost didn't hear his name called until it counted late, was A.J. Rollins with a couple key buckets in the low post. And then, by the way, you had O'Malley, who – wow, he'd like a few of those threes back. He missed some wide open looks, but still possessing the ability to get downhill and get to the rim.
Yeah, and then heck, Martell Evans, junior, coming off the bench,
the Energizer Bunny.
And so Prep's in that third quarter. Prep seniors, they had some of their wings. They were making some bad decisions, some turnovers, taking some bad shots. So Lukey Evans didn't play in the first half. Turned to him, the junior. He's played every game, but isn't a huge part of the rotation. Came in there and gave him some good stretch, and he stuck with them in the fourth quarter. He went and got fouled 3 times, made 5 of the 6 free throws, got the steal on the kind of the pass out to Justin City for the breakaway dunk. He gave him a nice spark. So how
about him converting at the foul line?
Yeah,
I think he came into that one shooting as 48%er.
Yep, and made 5 out of 6. So that was a key stretch too. So that is kind of the thing about this game is you could feel either way if you're Prep coming out of this. That was a huge opportunity. Catching Bellevue West on the back end of that back-to-back where they had to give so much to beat Millard North. They played so well in that game. It's hard to replicate that kind of effort in back-to-back nights. You didn't get quite the same amount of prep time for Prep that you would have for Millard North. Obviously, you had the whole week leading up to it. So you couldn't have asked for a better situation. And you had that game won. Like you said, you had that 11-point lead early in the fourth quarter, and to let it slip away there. And you had a couple chances, even in overtime, to take back the lead, to get it. They were trading buckets in that overtime. They go in there, miss a shot. Bellevue West goes back down and scores, and so now you're trailing versus kind of trading shots there. So you got to come away. This is a huge missed opportunity for Prep. On the other hand, they were right there. And they had a chance to win that game. They showed they've got what it takes to compete with the very best. So it's clearly that top 3 right now.
Is it possible to say, I'm almost hesitant to say this, is Coach Lutke underrated or underappreciated as a head coach?
I don't know that he's underrated. Maybe I think you
underappreciated, not underrated.
Yeah. I think you turn towards guys like Doug Woodard and
Coach Behrens.
Yeah, and so guys that have kind of had the bigger names and have been doing it for so long. But I mean, you look at what Lutke's done at Prep there, and the way he's built up that program to where they turn guys over and they've got guys that are similar players that step up, fill that mold.
What's a bad season look like for Prep? I mean, is it 16 wins?
Something. I remember they were
14 wins, and people wonder what's going on.
Yeah, so they've been top 5 in the last several years, kind of in that mix. So they just really don't step. And then we're talking O'Malley, Jungers, Evans. Like these guys are going to be ready to step in next year to kind of keep this going, even though they're going to lose.
You talk about multiple championship winners since 2010. Lutke is right there with the Chubbicks, the Woodards. Yeah. I mean, it's a short list. The Barons, the Woodards, the Chubbicks, the Lutkes. I mean, they're dominating the state titles here in the last 10 years.
And the way that he's kind of adjusted the way they play over the last few years. Since I've started, they playing much more up-tempo, much more space and pace. Yeah. He's one of those coaches that was able to see where the game is going and adjust the way his teams played and be really good at it. Like you can't. There aren't a lot of guys that coaches. They kind of have their style and they're good at what they do. We've seen this at Creighton with Greg McDermott. The ability to transform kind of your style and the way you teach it, and then do that really well as well. That speaks to how good of a coach you really are.
How are you kind of previewing? And I know Westside has Elkhorn South tomorrow in a reschedule, but a huge game against Millard West on Friday. Millard West, matchup-wise, in my opinion, it's not good for Omaha Westside. A big, strong, physical bunch. They guard you, they push you, they touch you. I don't love Westside's chances and the ability to win a low-scoring game. Yeah. How do you see that one, and how can Westside maybe get the scoring going?
Yeah, Evan Meyersick had a heck of a week last week.
It's a handful.
9 points, 9 boards, 9 assists in their first game, and then followed up with 26 and 8, I think, in their second game last week. And at 6'4", 6'5", the ability to step out and knock down a jumper as well as score inside, catch on the roll and finish, post up and finish. He is going to be a tough matchup. I'm not quite sure.
I think Westside really has to make a concerted effort, especially without Oddbody. Yeah. They have to make Millard West play 94 feet. Because they're so quick and so good off the bounce with the catch and shoot. If they can, that's especially defensively, right? Like they've got some trap to their game. They can guard you for 94 feet. They're going to have to find a way to make Millard West put it on the deck.
Yeah, and try to speed them up, make sure they can't get those easy post touches. I think that's absolutely the path to success for Westside in that game. Obviously, they're going to have to shoot the ball. It seems like they've been doing that a little bit better recently than they were in the first half of the season when they were struggling. So that's going to be a huge key. You've got to be able to speed them up, go get some easy looks for yourself, and then you need some bench contributions, a couple guys that step in and knock down a couple of shots there. That's kind of how you keep those point totals up. Is you come at them with kind of the relentlessness. You push it every chance you get, and then you got guys coming off the bench with fresh legs and kind of continuing that same style. Safe
with Pius at 5. They're in. We got 1 through 5, right? Yeah. Central Firm at 4, finding multiple ways to play. I mean, maybe that's the Coach Barron's factor. Kind of started to get his rotation down too, and Pius at 5. Yeah, and Pius kind of survived a tough game from Scott this last week. That's how they play.
Yeah. I told you it was going to be a pretty good one.
You did. Yeah. He said, well, that one's interesting. That one's on my radar. And at first blush, I thought, wow, I don't love the matchup in the backcourt. But it was very, very physical. And Scott doesn't mind playing that way.
Well, and Pius had some huge plays in the fourth quarter. Corner threes from Brady Christensen and then Luke Taubenheim from each corner in that fourth quarter that allowed them to pull away when neither one of those guys that really scored the rest of the game come in, knock down those huge shots. They're able to get control and then just hold on to it the rest of the game.
It's a little juggling act for Coach Pitchko, right? Because he likes tempo. But sometimes I think Pius' shot selection gets away from him. I mean, but that's the way they play. And we're going to get to a team here in a second because we're talking about coaching jobs. I want to get to Platteview and Wahoo because I saw that one. There's a couple of big ones with Mount Michael and Norris. And then there's Waverly kind of way in the cut. I want to get to that in a sec. But having said that, there's some give and take there, right? To be free-flowing and give freedom versus is that a good shot or can we get a great shot, right? I felt like it reared its ugly head against Bell West, and it almost caught up with them the other night.
Yeah, and I think part of it is when you don't have a ton of individual creation, I think a lot of those guys are better kind of finishers than they are creators. So you're kind of relying on the Hoibergs a lot to go create. Those are the two guys that can really create for themselves
especially
and for others.
Good strength off the bounce.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the guys that can off the bounce get into the paint, and whether they create a shot for themselves or kick out or whatever, those are the two guys. Because Sam Hostreiter, he's still kind of coming along. He's still coming into his own as far as an individual
very capable.
Sport.
He's shown you some flashes, hasn't he? He can put the biscuit in the basket.
There's a reason he's one of 4 players with the Division I offer at this point. So he's a guy that he's going to be really good. He's not quite consistently where they necessarily need him to be kind of that go-to guy. So it's a lot falls on those Hoiberg twins, and occasionally they'll try to do too much, but that goes for a lot of kids at the high school level. So.
Yeah, let's hop over to B, right? Because Elkhorn Mount Michael has got Gross. I believe Gross is still winless.
Yeah.
Then they have Lincoln Lutheran. And then they've got the big one on the 6th, right? This upcoming weekend against Norris. Norris, in the same vein, has Beatrice, then Lincoln Christian. And then we just talked about the aforementioned matchup with Mount Michael. Kind of how do you see this week shaking out with a couple of look-aheads? Potentially no dangers until we get to the 6th. Is that kind of how you're looking at it?
Yeah. Man, Class B, fun again. Just like we talked about, same with football. All these teams are playing each other, and some of them are playing each other twice, and because of the conference tournaments.
Yeah, we'll get that. We'll get to the Platteview and Wahoo, who will see each other tomorrow night after just playing each other Saturday.
Yeah, and the EMC with Waverly and Bennington and Norris, all in that mix, 3 of the better teams in the class. So
that Bennington game was tough, right? 55-52. I'm thinking to myself, wow, do I need to be paying more attention to Bennington? That dipped them just to 500, but again, winning culture, right? I mean, those guys are used to winning.
Oh, they're 8-6 now, and Tyler LeClaire missed the first couple games, so he's still kind of working his way back from that football injury, and he's a big part of what they do. And the thing about Bennington is Austin Holtz, their point guard. He's kind of more of an off-ball catch and shoot type of guy. He can really light it up. If you can't keep track of him, they're going to have a chance to beat anybody.
So you're basically talking to Scott because they have right. It's like what is it? It's interesting though because I'm onto this. Winning begets more winning, right? And these guys that are used to playing a certain way, regardless of sport, have found a way to bring that across their sports, right? I mean, are you kind of vibing with that? It's no coincidence that some of these key cogs are multi-sport guys that are used to winning. I look at Hood at Norris, right? Yeah. I look at what's going on at Waverly. Waverly basketball is just like Waverly football. They grind you. They wear on you. They just will hang in there longer than you will. I mean, that's kind of the school's culture.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. It's kind of that same thing that does carry over, and especially when it's the key guys that are playing both sports. You don't necessarily have to be the star of each team, but a guy like Hood, who's not the leading scorer on that Norris team, but he does a lot of little things. He's a great athlete. He contributes a lot to that team, even if he isn't the number one guy. So, and Trey DeVoe, it was kind of the same thing for football. He's kind of a basketball first guy, but decided to go play football and was a huge part of what they did. So it's that does carry over. It's hard to win without knowing how to win. Like we've seen so many times at multiple levels where young teams still kind of try to figure it out. Speaking of winning and kind of, I think perhaps the biggest surprise in Class B is what you talked about with Platteview.
There's no question.
I was talking to one of their I went to the semifinal against Beatrice, and I was talking to one of their parents afterward, and it's like, yeah, we're totally shocked. We nobody over there thought they were going to be this good, and that's a credit to the kids, to the coaching staff, for surpassing expectations by so much. And we know Connor Milliken, the leap he's taken has been huge, and Tyler Riley has made a huge step up.
It's now the law firm, right? Yeah. It's Draper and Riley,
and that's who I was going to mention. Alex Draper has been shooting the lights out. He, I think he was 5 of 6 from 3 against Beatrice. I think he had
Wahoo,
another 4 or 5 against Wahoo. He's shooting about 40% as a sophomore.
I was joking with the Millikens, it didn't just quite roll off the tongue. So it's Milliken with getting a little help from the law firm, right? I like Riley and Draper. The third quarter against Wahoo, it got away from them. Because here's the thing about Platteview, and some other teams better figure this out. And it's funny. People will hear Coach Brodsky and Coach of the Year in the same sentence, and they'll kind of, oh, come on. But his ability, he's kind of this kinder, gentler Coach Brodsky. He's playing with younger players. It's almost like I don't like the term because those guys want to get coached up, but it's almost like they're playing with house money, right? You just said nobody expected them to be where they are, and you watch the way they play offensively. It is free-flowing. They get shots up. They play with a certain amount of confidence. And here's the thing that I think the rest of Class B has to figure out. You can keep them down for spurts, but at some point they get you. They got Elkhorn in the loss, right? They'll get you with like an 8-0, 9-0 run. Now they have to guard better. They're a little leaky on the defensive end, but man, they get you with volume and shooting. And now that they've got the law firm going, I mean, Milliken can have a quiet 32, which is what I thought he had against Wahoo. I wouldn't have guessed that was the total. He made some tough shots. He had a couple of pullbacks from 3 where I'm just like, you just got to tip your cap.
And that's the thing. Like, the thing about him is he's just so relentless. He is not going to stop. There's nothing you can do. He is getting his shots up no matter what. And it may look like a bad shot in the first quarter. Second quarter, he's going to hit 3 in a row, taking the same exact shot. Yeah, he is never going to be discouraged by.
He's the one guy so far in B that you just cannot let get going.
No,
because I think he wakes up in the morning and it's like, confidence vitamin? Nah, don't need that. Like he just doesn't get rattled.
That Beatrice game, they defended him perfectly. You could not have defended him better. He didn't score. He missed all his shots. It was awesome defense, forced him into really tough looks. He couldn't get off the dribble. There was always help there. They're walling up, keeping him off the bounce, contest on every shot. comes out, bangs in a three, first possession in the second quarter, and he's off and running.
Yeah. And that's what happens. And you get the good matchups, right? Because Platteview gets the rematch with Wahoo Tuesday. Who knows how many points will be scored in that Ralston-Platteview game? I mean, they may score 180 in that game. And then they've got Elkhorn North, who can grind you. Maybe another Coach of the Year candidate in B is Coach King, and I don't think anybody would shake a stick at that because I think they've surpassed expectations as well, especially for a first-year program. And then they've got Hastings, right? So Platteview sitting there at 4. I believe they're 5th in points right now currently. But then there's that team sitting right behind them at Waverly who, believe me, even the folks in Platteview know that is, you talk about matchups, that would be a very tough matchup for Platteview. And it's all about matchups, right? A grinding team. They make you carve out possessions. They make you guard. They got a fantastic head coach. And there's Waverly just kind of laying in the cut. Yeah,
and that Plattview's 14-3. They got losses to Elkhorn, Roncalli in overtime, and then Waverly, 51-44 is their last loss. But after that Elkhorn loss, they went back and beat them. They beat Beatrice twice. Yep. They beat Bennington. They just beat Wahoo, who's a really good team. So they're putting together a really impressive resume for sure.
Of that top, do you think that top 5 is pretty firm? I know we both kind of scratch our head about Elkhorn, and it's hard, right? It's like 11 and what are they? 11-5
now.
5. That's not a bad record, but they're sitting there kind of at 7. I think most people have them 7th or 8th, kind of composite. Did you expect more out of those guys this year, or you think they still have more in the tank?
So I think. I did expect a little bit more. I thought they would be in kind of amongst those that top 2 just based on, heck, we talked about kind of the winning multi-sport kids, and they've got some tough kids there that were a big part of what they did in football. And Drew Christo obviously kind of leading the way, but they got some other guys out there too. And it just seems like they're struggling to get things to click. And they've got a lot of athleticism. They've got a lot of size. There's not a lot of kind of creation off the bounce. And I think that's where offense can be a struggle at times. They just don't have a lot of spacing, and it's easier for teams to take with length, like Norris did.
And that's a long basketball team.
And man, twice Norris absolutely picked apart their 1-3-1 with their ball movement, and so that's they're going to have to find ways to score, and they might have to adjust a little bit of what they're doing to make that happen. Just kind of, it's tough without spacing. Teams have the length to kind of take away those post-entry passes, make it tough for them to score inside. Drew Christo, I think he had 1 bucket against Norris in that EMC final, and he only took 3 shots, and 2 of them were jumpers, including his bucket. So they made it tough, and they didn't really score anything at the rim. So that Elkhorn's going to have to find a way to kind of counteract that, teams defending them that way. But I think Elkhorn and Scott, 11-4, 11-5, both those teams are kind of not necessarily in that top 5 right now in terms of record, but I wouldn't sleep on either one of them. They both have the talent to make a run for sure.
Yeah, a lot of big matchups before we let you go. And before we get out of here, there's Westside, Millard West. There's Norris and Mount Michael. You could go Platteview and Hastings. What games or game in A and B do you think you can learn? What will you have learned the most about when we talk again on Monday?
Yeah, I think it's probably the Millard West side one you talked about, kind of who is clearly that next team after the top. And then Mount Michael and Norris. Yeah. Those probably are the 2 best teams in B right now, the 2 most complete teams in B right now, where they've got both sides, they've got length, they've got skill. Cade Rice played unbelievably well against Elkhorn on Saturday at the point guard spot. And then obviously they've got Brayson Mueller and Trey DeVoe and CJ Hood with that length at front line. And we saw Caleb Brink got back out there for Mount Michael. Which
I was just going to say, Brink kind of shocked the world being back early.
Yeah, he played in that South Sioux game this last week.
I could have seen that being back come districts.
Yeah, and right? That's the initial thought. That's what they were kind of worried that it was more of a long-term thing, and that's kind of why we brought it up last week, because that dramatically changes who they are and what they can do. But the fact that he's back now, we'll see kind of what he's got, how close to 100% he is. But that's going to be a huge matchup there on Saturday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll have to flip a coin and figure out where we're going. We'll divvy it up. We'll get you covered. That's the whole kit and caboodle. He's one of the best in the business. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm just a guy that's moving along, try to get along. Slow motion is better than no motion, right? We keep it moving slow. That's Nebraska Preps postgame. That's my main man, Jacob Padilla. We'll be back next Monday. Make sure you're here.
A Hurrdat Media Production.